Hi everyone. So today I'll be talking about linear and non-linear pedagogy and what I've learned from class today. So in general, to summarize the two main approaches, linear pedagogy is considered a more old-fashioned approach, where you can consider a more copy and paste style of coaching, where the coach shows a way to do a skill and expects the player to replicate it. So you can think of it as like a example, a basketball coach shows what he considers to be a proper jump shot or a proper shooting form and expects the player to practice that and master it through repetition. Whereas non-linear pedagogy can be considered a more learner-oriented approach, where the player learns the skill through games and through different constraints that can be set by the coach to try and master the skill through those games mentioned. So this could arise from let's say football, where at first we start off with a passing drill. Of course, passing is a very basic foundation for soccer. So we start with passing in the stationary position without running around and passing. And then as they get more advanced, we can progress to the next level and include movement. So this can be considered under Gentile's taxonomy, where we adjust the dimensions involved. So in this case, first dimension of the athlete's body, because now they're actually moving. So that's one. We can also change the size of their playing area. We could make it smaller or bigger, depending on what we want to work on. If we want to work on the quality of their touches when they receive and pass the ball, then maybe we can consider making the area smaller for a more advanced group and bigger for a less advanced group. We can also use both approaches in Gentile's taxonomy. So for example, if we are talking about linear pedagogy, we can look at, passing, as we said, in the stationary position first, and then passing and moving into the direction of the pass. So that is the foundation of the drill. In linear pedagogy, the coach would probably ask them to repeat it till they are able to do it consistently. However, in non-linear pedagogy, a drill that I can think of to facilitate more fluidity in this practice is to leave a few more empty cones in the area and say that, okay, when you pass, you move into any empty cone you want. So without the coaches dictating which cones that they have to go, which directions they have to go, and may allow them to understand better the concept of moving into space in football, which is of course very important. You don't want to stand too close to your teammates when you've passed the ball. You want to move and occupy the appropriate space. So for task progression based on time, space, and repetition, we can also segue that from Gentile's taxonomy, where we talked about the space that is used for certain drills. So for this progression based on time, space, and repetition, for linear pedagogy, maybe it will be easier to adjust based on number of repetitions. If the activity is going to be repeated, then depending on how long it takes or what the coach wants, you can adjust the number of repetitions. But of course, it's not saying that you can't adjust the space and time for this. But for non-linear pedagogy, I believe that time and space can be adjusted more effectively. So for example, now you play a two-side game in football. So number of repetitions, we can say, okay, now you can only touch the ball 5 times and you have to enter the opponent's box and shoot. Or we can say in terms of a time, you can only hold the ball for 5 seconds, which I think is a very realistic approach to coaching football, especially at a higher level. 5 seconds and you have to pass the ball, and we've already addressed space. So yeah, I think those are the ways you can approach this factor with non-linear pedagogy. So task modification in football is interesting, I feel, because it's very broad. There are many ways that you can modify a task. Because of course you can break down football into many things. You can break it down to defense, you can break it down to possession. So sticking on the topic of possession, one of the more popular drills for modern coaches is having the idea of a neutral player, right? So these players are able to play for the team with the ball. So this of course gives them an advantage and encourages the teams to keep possession, to have the benefit of the added player. So the change in the number of players, the difference in the number of players is some form of task modification. Now I find sequencing for task for practice is to be interesting, because I myself consider my coaching style to be slightly more non-linear. I like to coach my intended objectives through games rather than just asking my players to practice the drill repeatedly. It does bore children, and as we know, children's attention span is not very long, so we want to keep them engaged. And so I find it interesting because I find that I teach in parts rather than using a lead out task. Now, of course, this is not something that always happens, but I find teaching in parts to be something that is still very applicable in today's coaching, because it is the idea of, example again, let's say we start off with passing and movement, and then start off stationary passing, and then passing the movement, and then passing the space. At the end of the session, we have a two-sided game. We are trying to see what we've coached in the end of the session. By the end of the session, we want to see them move into space, pass it when they're moving, and no more of those basic stationary passes. But this is not to say that I do not do lead up tasks at all, or that I don't see it in today's coaching. That's not true at all, right? Especially with younger children who may not be able to grasp the concept that you want them to derive from your sessions. You can start off in different approaches. So you can start off from like a reverse way. You can start off with maybe a shooting drill, a meter away for, let's say, for a 5-year-old, a meter away from the goalpost, and then start off moving kind of like backward in the action chain. So shooting first, and then passing into a shot, and then go to movement into space. Of course, I don't think this is done in one session. This is not done in one day, one training session. But yes, I think it is an approach that I can look into, that I definitely have to look into more and try to apply, because I think this is advanced is not the right word, but this is something that is worth putting some time into to try and expand my my playbook of coaching. So for teaching by invitation, I feel that this is something that I have done a lot at different occasions, especially in training, because sometimes you have this issue where some players are a lot more proficient at the sport than their counterparts. So what coaches like myself used to do is to limit their ability. So we say, okay, now you can't score, because he could be a very prolific scorer, and now we say, okay, now you can't score, you can only pass. We have to, as coaches, not just enhance their strengths, but also remove their weaknesses, work on their weaknesses. So by doing this, where they find scoring very easy and dribbling very easy, so they tend to score a lot, let's limit them and say, now you can only pass, or that now you can't run with the ball, you can only pass. And so it kind of puts in an extra level, an extra barrier for them to overcome, and now they have to practice. They can't just rely on their instinctive dribbling and goal scoring, which are very prevalent at the younger ages. You see this big difference in players sometimes. So we do this differentiated kind of differentiated approach for these players. As I've kind of mentioned, alluded to just now about this developmental appropriateness. Now, of course, I mentioned that younger kids may be more suited to lead up tasks because they don't understand what you might be trying to drive, what you're trying to drive at the young age. And so we have to adapt our styles and our drills and maybe involve more games for them to understand. So example, one of my favorite with the younger children is to fall onto the ground and grab the ball when you hear the whistle. And this is to work on their bravery for goalkeepers. You know, you blow the whistle and everyone drops to the floor, catches the ball. Right? But you can't go up to a 5-year-old or 3-year-old and say, I want you to dive like a goalkeeper. They don't get it. So you have to use different ways and say, okay, when you hear the whistle, grab the ball and fall to the floor. You know? So when you break it down to that level, for the younger kids, it's very helpful because they understand what you want from them. And inevitably, unknowingly, they learn what you want them to learn. Now, of course, having said that, there are also times where players are stronger than their age group, and for those, we also have to improve on our training drills. We cannot just give them the same training drill we give to a normal 7-year-old. Like for example, if we have a very strong 7-year-old that can play with the likes of a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, which I have the fortune of coaching. One such kid, you have to coach at a more advanced level. And sometimes if you find that they can't, or that it's hampering their development when you coach them with their age group, you could consider shifting them up, right? This is us coaches knowing whether the activities are too easy or too difficult, and to try and decide in your mind, is this suited for them? If not, what should we do to adjust that? Lastly, with activity selection, right? We look at cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. For me, I focus a lot on cognitive, especially with the children, and also psychomotor with the even younger children, because a lot of them at young age, they don't have a good grasp of their motor skills, so you see them tumble a lot. And so a lot of the games is dribbling, getting them to move the ball, balancing acts, and those. This helps with the younger children's psychomotor skills. Now for the slightly older kids, I like to ask questions. I noted that is one of my favorite coaching styles. I use a lot of questions to boost their understanding of the lesson. And so yeah, with that, that's what I've understood from today's lesson, and thank you for this lesson.